I'm Rebekah.
I'm Jay.
And this is Rebekah the Ghost.
You're walking a dangerous line.
What did I do?
Is it real and how to deal?
Rebekah the Ghost Guide.
So, we're doing something a little different this week. What we are doing is combining an episode of Rebekah the Ghost Guide and Is It Real and How to Deal.
Yes.
Got a lot of fun stuff that people have been asking us, especially with everything going on with the COVID crisis. So we're trying to answer as many questions as we can on both forums to get you guys the best information possible.
And for this episode, we've been accepting videos from you. Questions, comments, and concerns, and we want to directly answer some of those during this time.
We got a bunch of questions running the whole gamut, but to break it down from Real and Deal's perspective, we're going to break it down spiritual footage, these questions as well, and we're going to say, is it real? What is it? And actually go into answering that question if it is real, and how to deal with it if that is the case as well. If it's not real, we're going to poke holes in it, but since most of these are questions anyway, we're just going to tell you what it is and how to deal with it. How about from your perspective?
Ghosts.
All right, so
People have been getting in touch with me about all kinds of stuff. Anything from going bumping the house to doors opening randomly to catching more things on their footage. A lot of people from home, now that everybody's home for, restrictive purposes and lockdown, people are getting a lot more activity in their home.
we've been getting a lot of questions about, hey, this has never been the case before. Why is it happening now?
Right, but on TikTok right now, there are big creators right now who are posting about things that have happened in their houses, around their houses, local parks, and I keep getting tagged on their videos, and I keep trying to reach out to them. Some people are after getting the quick views. What we're trying to do here is actually help.
If you want the help, respond, and we'll help you. We'll gladly help you. If you don't respond, we can't help you.
Especially if we're regularly tagged on your videos, and you see them. So it's really a choice. I'm not bothered here. I like our house and I like what's going on here.
Yeah, we're good. So with everybody asking us now, like, hey, why is this stuff happening now in the home when nothing else was there? One of the bigger questions that we've gotten is, hey, this is freaking me out. Is it harmful? So we received a video from a woman named Ashley. Now, she is asking one of the big questions that we are constantly getting. Hey, all of this stuff is happening when it hasn't happened before. Is it harmful?
Okay, so here's a question that should be educational. Other than outright attack, what are some indicators that a spirit could mean you harm?
Ooh, I love this question.
Because this is a big one. This is one we yell at all the time.
Yes, it's reminding me of the demons video
Demons.
that I made.
Yeah.
I'm gonna be you for a second. I just heard a noise outside.
Demons.
The biggest thing that I tell people is just because it scares you doesn't mean that it's bad.
Exactly.
Anything that we see for the first time is going to scare us. Imagine seeing a new color for the first time.
It's one of those things where, I guess really at any age, something you need to consider is that using sensory perception since birth and having that evolve, touch, scent, hearing, sight, smell, all of those are how we process the world around us. Having something that happens to us that is outside of that sensory perception, of course it's going to be jarring.
Yes.
You know what I mean? Something that we cannot immediately place.
And that's normal. It's normal to be like, whoa!
It's normal. That is a perfectly fine psychological knee-jerk reaction. Then I guess it goes more into, yes, it freaked you out. Is it harming you though?
Yeah, if you were to take yourself out of that situation, could you look at it from that bird's eye point of view and say, was I harmed there?
Right.
And it may be possible. I just did an episode, a question and answer on communicating with spirits. A huge thing that I talk about is mutual respect and consent. For example, I know some mediums.
Medians.
Rewind.
Rewind.
I know some mediums who are okay with having spirits move them around physically. That would be something, if I were communicating with spirits, I wouldn't give it the permission to use my hand and do something else. No, the closest I would come to that would be using a pendulum.
Something I guess that needs to be touched on as well is physical and non-physical action. When it comes to any kind of spirit reacting with you, reacting in your home, is it physical or non-physical, and what are the indicators there of, is this harmful or not? Because consent is absolutely a huge thing, but when it's something that, again, is extrasensory, you can't exactly do anything with it.
Sure.
How do you draw that line?
I recently got an email, and by the way, if you have questions, you should email me. It's on all of my accounts. Somebody was saying that they were hearing moaning from the attic above them, and that there's no way to get into the attic because it's completely sealed off from the home.
Right.
And they said that the moaning sounded rather inappropriate. So, of course we go into the logistics of it, but then the other side of it is, it may not be harming her physically, it might be harming her a bit mentally, which it is, because it's keeping her awake at night. Yeah. That's harmful. Even if it's something like keeping you awake, if it's keeping you from your day-to-day life, keeping you from your day-to-day ability to function well, like have sleep, that's not good. So you don't have to come at it with holy water and, your guns drawn, spiritual guns drawn.
Something else that does need to be said, though, with that is, it depends on the kind of spirit. If you have the time and the wherewithal to kind of pick to see what kind of spirit it is, then that helps you kind of get through and figure these things out.
Absolutely.
If it is like a standard spirit, if you want to call it that, then there are 100,000 reasons why it could be knocking, it could be making noise, you could be seeing it. Again, if you see it and it freaks you out, it's freaky. It is. Both of us have seen something that has wigged us out, but it's again not harmful. If you have a specific kind of spirit that is knocking on a wall or jangling keys or something, trying to get attention, you would say? Could be, honestly just reacting physically, because that's what it can do, limited by its availability of skills at its disposal.
And I'll say something that counters that popular culture has started to believe, and this partly comes from The Conjuring, which I love that movie. I love it.
It is
filmed locally in Wilmington.
It is not, however, the best litmus test to run everything through.
They say that 3 knocks is an insult to the Trinity. Maybe that could be, though people do have a tendency to not always pay attention to those knocks. Maybe it was 5 knocks and you missed the first 2 or the last 2.
Especially too with a lack of information. There's a lot of misinformation. It's easy to get anything you want on Google. And I say want very specifically because a lot of people look for the answer they were kind of leaning towards and then stop. There is a problem with that, but it's human nature. Whether you are Christian or not, whether you are spiritual or not, religious or not, there is, at least in a society that is more based in that specific religious dogma, there is a psychological filter that gets put in place. You start to see it through that filter. So 3 knocks could easily be an insult to the Trinity, but that's assuming that it's negative. That's assuming that it is, I hate the word demonic, but demonic because it's against that religious dogma.
Going back to how to tell if something is bad, and granted that's a give and take on what is bad, but if it is emotionally, mentally, or physically harming you, for one, we talked about losing sleep. That is a form of physical harm. That's a form of mental harm. Another thing is if it is actually talking to you and telling you bad things, and bad things mean something different for everybody. If it's telling you things that morally are wrong, that's an indicator you should not be talking with it. And if you wake up with any kind of bruising, scratches, and you don't necessarily have to wake up that way, if you are either causing
physical representations of some kind of
and it could be you causing yourself physical harm because that thing is manipulating you, or it is actually the one manipulating, that is bad. That is bad. That's a sign of something that has too closely attached itself to you. That's when you need to do a cleansing.
Watch the word attach, though. I will say that everybody says that, this spirit is attached to me. It's not. It is around you.
I'm glad you brought that up. Yes.
It is easy to say attached, and that's the thing. When it comes to any of this kind of work, looking at it from a scientific point of view is great. When it comes to people that have little experience and you don't mean little experience in a negative way, but little experience factually dealing with this kind of stuff, it's easy to start to get emotionally involved as well. So things like proximity, as far as a spirit being around you, becomes attached because it creates a personal link. Things like making contact or physically interacting with its environment become harmful actions because, again, it freaks you out. There's a lack of personal distance that you put there. Yeah. And it's only due to lack of experience with it. Or lack of knowledge base, I guess.
Even though something is close by and it may get closer over time, you can always back up. As in, you can back it up.
So, what is it? Is a spirit harmful? If it's, let's say, just knocking and jingling keys around, is it harmful?
I would say no, if it's strictly knocking. I would love a ghost to knock, because that's a way you can communicate with it, but I don't really tap in audibly, personally.
If it is rattling things around and flashing in and out of your vision, either with an orb or something else.
No.
If it is giving you physical shoves, if it is tugging at hair.
If I'm getting shoves near some stairs, yeah, that's not good. If I'm in a hallway going about my life and maybe they're just going by, that's fine.
If you wake up with scratches on your back or arms.
No bueno.
Being filled with negative emotions like sadness or despair or anxiety or fear that are not coming from a place of inside you or your brain.
Those are the worst kind. I hate them.
Exactly. How to deal.
For me personally, and it'll be a shorter answer than you because you've got all the tricks.
Right.
You got all the tricks up your sleeves. That's why we call them the coyote. So the way that I work, and it's hard to describe because my intuition works differently from a lot of people. We're still the same, morally speaking. But what I mean by that is when I say to make something back up, what I'll actually do is take my energy field and push.
Yeah.
I've done this on a number of occasions when things have come at me. And it's hard to do. It takes training. It takes meditation. It takes balance. It takes being filled with fear, looking at that, breathing, and pushing.
Now, here's a caveat, because I know we have people on TikTok and YouTube and say, I don't believe in energy work. I don't believe in that since it is spiritually based. What can I do instead? What would you say?
Figure out what gives you strength and what gives you peace, because you'll need both working alongside each other in order to make this work. For some people, that's a Bible. All right, pick up your Bible. If it means using lingo like Jesus and Mary and God, sure, use it. If that means
Allah, Yahweh, whatever,
yes.
go nuts. Yeah, absolutely.
If it means, if you're a pagan, if you know of different gods that work for you, boom. Whatever makes you stronger is exactly what you need.
Something that can also help is called, in a bunch of different spiritual practices, but also kind of from a psychological point of view, this helps. Because again, what if they are atheist and they have no ties to anything spiritual or religious? It's called the rule of one. You are the only person in control of your mind and the way it thinks. If you have something poking and prodding against you in ways that you don't want, you can also say, I don't want it. If you feel as though you are in some serious trouble, get in touch with someone. Seek help.
Yeah.
You can go see a therapist or a psychologist if you feel like you're starting to feel anxiety, depression, things like that are not really centered in you. You can do that to help. If you are spiritual or religious, talk to a spiritual or religious leader that you are close with.
Yeah.
If you are a practitioner or think that that's probably the way to go, you can seek out advice from people who are here to help people who are practiced in those kind of things.
Yeah.
Old Southern Conjure. For me, I'm on TikTok, I'm on YouTube, and I'm on Facebook. If you have questions... And Instagram. IG is a thing. If you have questions about spiritual interaction, those kind of things, you can always get in touch with me. If you cannot find a spiritual practitioner in your home, or if your town is one of those who would very much hate a spiritual practitioner in town, there are options available to you. Reach out. If you need help, ask for help if you need it, you know? Here is another video. This is by a TikToker by the name of Ethan Trace. Big TikToker, but he had haunted experience, a spiritual experience.
And he's a comedian.
Want to call it. He's a comedian, which is great. But again, it's that reaction, right?
Yeah.
Is it harmful? So, let us take a look at this one.
Hey, remember the other day when I think I told you my friend's apartment is haunted? Yeah! We just caught something on video while I was playing PlayStation VR.
Oh,
Oh,
okay.
there I go. No, you don't need help.
You don't need help. It just said howdy.
It was just like literally floating by.
So
Bless
that's
him. He's
hilarious.
like, help! And I'm like, that. It just went by.
Look at things objectively. Again, if it's harmful, there are specific indicators that mean it's harmful. If it just weirds you out, then it's not.
But I happen to see that he commented, because somebody was like, oh, it's not hurting you. And he says, tell that to the 3 scratches on my wrist.
That's different.
That's different. But I'm also thinking, with all of these situations, so many times there may have been something in this home for years that was never bothered, that was always fine. But all of a sudden, people are at the house all the time.
Yeah.
And they're getting upset because they're thinking, think about it, most people are at their homes maybe 50% of the day, maybe, and most of that they're sleeping. Well, imagine you have a roommate that you didn't know about who waits for you to leave so that they can just wander about, or waits for you to sleep. They're not trying to bother you. They just recognize that you're there and you shouldn't be.
So if he talked about the scratches, that's amazing, and we're glad we kind of put that together. That's kind of the big one. It's like, oh no, it scratched him. Something people forget, though, that I do want to mention, look at what you're doing. It's easy to get egocentric and say, this is a ghost in my house. It is freaking me out. Okay, what are you doing? Love it. So with that, with his video, what is it?
Well, it's certainly, I mean, okay, it's an orb. That looks like a clear orb. There are no wings. There's
no stinger.
There's no light source. I mean, it looks like a flat picture on top of a 3D video, right? Yeah. So it looks like something's just going by. Yeah. That's specifically from that video. We're not talking about everything else that's happened.
Yeah, we're not talking about everything else that's happened. We're just talking about that video.
A lot of people, I think, are going to pick up orbs right now as their home. A lot.
Yeah, and there's not enough contextual data in there to say, oh, hey, no, it is
That's
a tulpa.
Gerald.
It's Gerald. It's there's no contextual data to say it's a tulpa, it's a standard spirit, it's a residual. There's none.
Yeah.
You know, how to deal.
If that were the only occurrence, you don't have to. There's no dealing.
There's no dealing at all.
You could always reach out.
Yeah.
Do the thing that I was talking about, like say, hey, we're here.
And even if it's not the first time the thing has popped by, so what? Although I will say I loved his reaction.
Oh, yeah. That's the thing. He's hilarious. I love watching his videos.
So, Ethan Trace, if anything else, we enjoyed watching you see the spirit. I'm not going to regurgitate my lunch in my mouth during this video. We've talked about the fact that people are seeing more and more spirits, especially during all of this. That's influenced by the anxiety everybody's feeling right now. It's influenced by the fact that you're home more and you see more of it. We've also talked about how to tell if it's harmful or not. Something other people have asked, though, I've gotten this a lot, I know you've gotten it a couple times as well, how to communicate, either from a spiritual practitioner's point of view or not from one at all. We received this last video from a man named Noah. So let's take a look at this.
Here's a question for you. When you're doing readings and stuff, where do you feel like the messages are coming from?
Interesting. Because it's combining spiritual and divination practices as well.
Yeah.
Ways to communicate and ways to look. That's fascinating.
Yeah.
What do you think? I have my own answers, but what do you think?
Yeah. And I think everybody might have a different answer with this.
Yeah, this is a pretty open-ended one.
Yeah, and I love that. And that's why I always talk about keeping things open-minded. Some people might say Jesus or angels. I'm like, cool, bro,
great.
Whatever.
Great, wonderful.
I think an overarching term that I use is your gut. It's whatever makes you feel right. And that rightness may come from all kinds of places.
Yeah.
For me, I see it as this kind of connection. Like if I could describe it, it's almost as if I've seen these photos of aura work before, and granted this is me being kind of an energy person, where it's like all around you is this light, and then light also can come down through you all the way and then connect to that light from the outside. So it's almost like the earth on an axis with the atmosphere around it and the magnetic pull that each axis has. The way that I see it is each person has their own axis and has their own magnetic body around them. And then there's what's beyond that and how it connects with other things.
So that's where you believe the connection is. If you're gonna, let's say, do a reading, you're gonna throw cards down.
Mm-hmm.
How does whatever's giving you the gut feeling give it to you within that concept? Because I'll say it this way: what you described is not something at all anywhere close to what I do and how I connect, but it is still a connection. So how would you say that ties in?
I relate a lot with colors. I only allow the colors that I want within. But does that answer your question? That's the thing. It's such a good question. It's hard to describe. It's a great question.
How about this then? The question specifically asked when you do readings as well, not just connection, but when you do readings. I do bone readings. This is one of my bone kits. It's not my main bone kit. I use this one when I'm kind of on the road or on the run and I don't have time to pull out the full accoutrement. This one is a whole different way of connecting than these. These are oracle cards. These are none of the cards ever really meshed with me, ever. You know what I mean? They're all like happy and go lucky and dandy and they got fairies all over them. It's not my aesthetic. So I
look at this man.
Come on.
Does he look like a fairy man?
Look at me. Look at my tattoos. It's not my cup of tea. So I got bored, and since I graphic design, I made my own deck. Here is the commonality between these both, though. Okay, and I think this ties in not only with his question but with your answer. With both of these are only tools. If you're trying to find a good reader worth their salt, the thing you need to look for, and I think you can help me answer this as well, is somebody who doesn't just give you everything, one. Somebody who asks you questions for the sheer purpose of trying to get better into the answer, for two. Three is not vague. It's easy to say, Spirit led me. Or it's like people who evangelize and witness as well. The Lord led me to talk to you. Okay, that's fair. Spirit led me to talk to you is the exact same thing on the practitioner side. It's annoying and it's vague and it doesn't mean anything.
And this is something I went on my last episode of Rebekah the Ghost Guide, talking with spirits. You don't want somebody who asks these cheap questions, generalized questions of, somebody died. Yeah, of course somebody did. Is there anybody out there who's never experienced somebody else dying before? Or to say, and the name starts with T.
The whole thing is, these are guidelines. We're going to steal from Pirates of the Caribbean. They're more like guidelines. The whole point is for this to give you a kind of roadmap that you can start on. You see where it's kind of going to end up, but the whole point is for you to ask people, is to create the conversation, because you're doing this to communicate. Conversation doesn't only go one way, it's a two-way street. Where you call that kind of communication, that light, I call people poking you in the back of the head.
Yeah.
The big thing for me is to kind of balance back and forth and be an intermediary.
Yeah.
If we can do it for this one, what is it?
That's the thing. It could be anything, because it changes according to what you see and what you believe. So that's why I could answer that, but my answer would differ from yours, and it would differ for everybody who thinks for themselves.
There's no catch-all.
Yeah.
It's the best way that you connect, if you connect at all. So, how to deal?
Have open communication with what you're working with.
And know how you're communicating.
Yeah, know who to trust. And that takes years sometimes.
Takes a long time. Remember, if you are unfamiliar with something, look for good sources, talk with practitioners, physical people, and we've said this 100,000 times. I'm looking at you. Vet your sources. With all of that being said, yay! Thank you so much for watching. Thank you for watching. In the meantime, though, what do you have going on for Rebekah the Ghost Guide?
So much stuff. So I have got videos coming out on haunts in Asheville, North Carolina, on haunts in Austin, Texas, haunts in New York, before all of the COVID stuff went down. So there's plenty of stuff, travel haunted videos coming out. I've got more picture videos that are gonna come out, and then of course my question and answer videos that come out every 4 weeks or so.
Nice.
Plenty of stuff. And what's going on for Old Southern Conjure?
As far as is it real and how to deal, we have new videos that come out every week, typically Fridays at 2 for Old Southern Conjure. If you look at my Facebook or my Instagram, I am posting new content about online workshops, online classes, Zoom is a huge thing, so how to get involved with those and actually learn. I am also always open for digital, like video or phone readings, either with Throwing the Bones, which is a system that's like 60,000 years old, or cards, which is not as old. The old woman in the caravan, you'll find love in 10 years. It's not like that. It's very much a, why did you do this?
Speaking of which, so you made those cards, you designed them, you make them. You made the bones.
Yes.
Do you make other things? You make pendulums.
I've got an Etsy page with everything.
Yeah. Spell bottles, mojo hands.
It's old school Conjure. I also sell these cards. Y'all, thank you so much for watching.
Thank you.
However, here's the thing. If you enjoyed this video and you want to know more, see this big subscribe button? Hold the other end of the subscribe button, okay? Hit that subscribe button. Also, you see this bell? Hit this bell. Get notified of things happening. Stay safe, stay healthy, but most importantly, stay spooky. We'll see you next week.
Peace.